Oseo.
Oseo.
That's a Cherokee greeting, and wave the great feather for the good of it. The upright feather, the symbol of the ancient Egyptian Mayat. She was the axis of morality for the Egyptian civilization that lasted 4,000 or 5,000 years, like that. And right now I still have her image that I've composed up here. This is Mayat with the vulture's wings here. And she stands for truth and justice and honesty and morality. And even though the civilization that sponsored her has more or less faded into ancient history, we still have a need for the upright feather of truth and justice. So we still have that there. You can go right down here to this piece that I have here. This is a tablita from the pueblo called Zuni in New Mexico. And this face here is a mask, and it's from Japan, and so it's very appropriate. And that's a way for me to begin. In the past few weeks I have been showing everyone, by way of this medium, that ancient Egypt, is really part of the Southwest and even into Mexico. And so certain people that I've highlighted, like last week, the Hopi, definitely, they're from the Eastern Delta, and so forth. So I want to show that people in this country that have been called Indians, or now indigenous, or Native Americans, many of these people have immigrated here in various times in the past before the Northwest Europeans came here. And so still there is evidence of the culture in these people. The one that I am highlighting today, I'm titling the Zuni Indians, simply to put it that way, because that's the way they have been referred to. This is a Pueblo people that whose Pueblo is in the very western part of New Mexico, almost into Arizona. And they are very interesting and very unique, and mainly or generally in the idea of the United States history, they came into focus because they were invaded and assaulted by the Spanish conquistadors in the 17th century. And so that's kind of where I'm going to begin with this piece. I've had this for 50 or 60 years, this tablita. I was very intrigued with the expert painting. It's all been painted in enamel. It had other fixtures on it that over time have dropped away. I still have a little bit of feathers on it here. So that's my centerpiece for the presentation of Zuni here. And we drive right down below it here, this coil basket. This is actually from Morocco. This is made by Berbers in Morocco. And that gives me the kind of the kickoff point here. These people being called Zuni are Berbers, or you could say they stem from the Berbers of North Africa. And there's very specific evidence for that. The name Zuni is not in the language of these people. The Pueblo people, mostly clustered more or less in the middle of New Mexico, have several different languages. Some of them are not intelligible from one Pueblo to another, for instance. And these various languages and so forth, one of them is the Kurasan. So it seems that the name Zuni has derived from Kurasan. And the way that that came about, evidently, this is almost legend by now, the Spaniards, were looking for something. The idea, or at least the American version of this fable, is that the Spaniards were looking for the 7 cities of gold. And so supposedly, they must have asked somebody in one of these pueblos, where is that? And so they said, well, just keep going over that way. Just keep going over there that way. That's where Zuni has come from. And then it turned out that the Spaniards put that label on these people that they eventually did invade. So basically that's where the name comes from. Now the name of the people themselves is the Ashui. That is super interesting. That's an Egyptian name. And that Egyptian name, Ashui, means the travelers. And these are Berbers, and Berbers are semi-nomadic. In other words, they move around. So even in modern times, I've even seen on television a while back, some Arab official in North Africa saying that's the problem they have with the Berbers, that they're always moving around here. Now the Berbers are people, various people of, we're calling North Africa. There's a city, city-state, a country-state called Libya there. We've heard about that in the news, Gaddafi and like that. One time the whole North Africa has been called Libya. It's a Greek name. It's a Greek name, and different people have had, control or dominance of North Africa at different times. One of them is the Greeks. The other were the Phoenicians, also called Carthaginians or Carpatas, and also the Romans, different people, and finally, the Arabs of no more than 1,000 years ago. So Arabs have had control of that for a long time here. So that's the general idea. The name Berber is sort of a corruption of what the Arabic is Babara. Babara is sons of the bear. And the bear, evidently, means the constellation of the bear, and that these people are following the constellation of the bear in a westward destiny here. These people have actually originated in Asia Minor. In Asia Minor, they were devoted to the goddess of nature. The Greek pronunciation of it is Kabeli, which you have a little thing. What the K is in Greek, when you get into Latin, you have the letter C. Early Latin, it's a C pronounced like a K, and then the late Latin is a C pronounced like C, like that. And you have the example with Celts and Celts. So we have the same thing here. The name Sibyl. There is the Sibyl that is the prophetess, and that there is the Sibylla. Sibylla is actually the Greek Kabeli. And that was actually the name of these people when they arrived in the area that is now Morocco or Algiers. They overlap each other. That's just a starter. So now to get over here to these people here that we're referring to, the Ashui, Zuni here, they have their own genesis. All these different groups of people have their own genesis of how they got started, basically. Last week we looked at, we know personally that the Hopi do know that they arrived here at the mouth of the Colorado on stepping stones from the south, and know enough of that to still have a ceremony recalling that. Here with these people, that is my center theme here today. Their genesis has to do with that they're looking for the center place. In ancient Egypt, this was, pretty much, different locales differently said, that they were at the center place one way or another. So it is a kind of a general idea from that ancient world. So these people were looking for the center place, the navel or the womb of the earth. You have different ways of rendering that. In this case, as they were sort of migrating about wanting to find that here in the Southwest, the elders got together and conferred with the Sun Father, they call him, the Sun Father, find us that center place. So the Sun Father transformed himself and manifested himself as what we call a water strider. The water strider. Here, you can look right here. This Hirasi Yotepe, just give a name for the water spider. And the water spider said, I stretched out my legs in all the directions, and wherever my heart rests, that is the center place. So that's how they arrived, and here is my composition of the center place. They call it Halona Itiwana. Halona Itiwana is the center place where the pueblo that we're now calling Zuni, or Shiwina, is right here. Claudia and I were there in the pueblo of Zuni, Shinawa, not too long ago. It just turned out that we happened to drive in a certain way, and there was a parade, and we were driving my pickup truck, we ended up being in the parade. We drove right down the main thoroughfare there in the parade in this pueblo. So that's all the way that we can see how these people that I'm referring to come into light. And if you can go all the way over to the other side there, I have a drawing. In this drawing, I've given this, the title that is the Zuni Man. Now, the people of North Africa, having been variously occupied, lived in, or dominated by all different people, are quite a mixture of people, and it is part of Africa. So they do have, different features, very interesting when you look at old photographs of people from this pueblo. They're all different people. And if you can come over here so that I can just bring this up. There's a couple of books that are not too old, One is the Zuni Enigma here. And this is this woman, Nancy L. Davis, is an anthropologist from the state of Washington who did a lot of research here. And I won't go into it, but this book was a gift to me, and I'm showing it here that there is an ongoing interest, study, and cultivation concerning these people that are my main topic today. And another book here is being called the Pueblo Revolt by David Roberts. He really did a lot of research, digging this up, and it's really titled The Secret Rebellion That Drove the Spaniards Out of the Southwest. And he's done a wonderful job here in showing the, best to say, the atrocious conduct of the Spaniards in the Southwest, and the lamentable carnal conduct of the Catholic priest towards people, of which in recent times we have become acquainted with. So this is also very informative because he really did ferret out a lot that has been overlooked or ignored about this event, as the one time, in his words, that Native Americans succeeded, in a rebellion against the well-armed and dominant Europeans, So we like to know that here. Some of the things that I have here from that, if you go right up here, I've replicated this. This would be very characteristic of the kind of painting on the large oyas. All these people in the Southwest have very similar ceramics and baskets, So again, remembering that these people have derived from their veneration, I can call it, of the goddess of nature. So the deer is very prominent. I mean, actually, people in their houses will have deer head altars, and so I really want to show that. And here, this is to replicate a antler that is used by certain ceremonialists in ceremonies. Here, it's a deer antler. And again, when you look at this piece here, this basket, this is from Morocco. And people do mistake these for baskets made in the Southwest. The material on this is sealgrass. And if you can go all the way up there to that basket, it's a very expertly made basket. This is a Hopi basket. It was made by Bernice Puliyasama. Puliyasama here. And I have it here because it features a figure in the middle, Koyameshi. They call him Mudhead. And this is a ceremonial character that is very prominent in the Ashawi or Zuni ceremonies. And that's a very good illustration. All of these people in the Southwest that have derived from the Mediterranean have this style of coil basketry. And it is definitely known that that's the origin of the coil basketry is the Eastern Mediterranean here. And another, you come all the way down here. This is very characteristic, called, the Zuni. It's jars covered with crushed turquoise. And there are little carved animal figures with feathers all around, and there are holes in it. And reportedly the idea is that they put these little charms in here. Americans call them fetishes, so you would call it a fetish jar. And they say they feed these charms through those holes. And here is a small one, likewise. And I use this one. It's filled with cornmeal that I can, sort of like we call it, make an offering. I actually from that here. And one thing that these people are really well known for is carving these fetishes or these charms of animals, from different material. It can be shell, horn, or stone. This one seems to be a kind of wood. It's really a fine carving of a bear with an arrowhead on it. That's what they usually have. They usually say these things are referred to hunting. I'm not quite sure. But the bear is the most often and prominent figure to see in the artwork of these people here. And maybe it's related to Sons of the Bear, but generally the bear means a healer. So that has very much to do with it here. And when they can come down here, you can look at this. This is actually a Berber doll. This is a Berber doll that is also looking the way I just saw in a book the other day, a picture of a woman that looks similar like this and identified as a Berber. So that's a Berber doll here. I want to go over here to this map here, because now we're getting close to the Spaniards. This map is dated 1666, and this was the idea or the concept of California. And you see, it looks like an island. And here I've marked, this is San Diego on this map, and here this is San Francisco on this map. And this pueblo that we're calling Zuni is right here. Now, this map, the print didn't come through, but on other maps it does actually say not only Zuni, but this map is also titled Nueva Granada. Granada is the Berber state in Spain. So now we're going to start a little bit with the Spanish. And that is the Berbers, or some section of Berbers, crossed over from North Africa into Spain. The opening is not very wide of the Atlantic Ocean into the Mediterranean Sea. It usually says about 50 miles. Somewhere in that, they call it the Straits of Gibraltar, is some kind of a rock or island. It's only like 1 or 2 miles circumference. And it's called the Rock of Gibraltar. Very interesting. Gibraltar is named after Gabriel Cabrit, the Berber leader who led the Berbers from North Africa into Spain and established a state there called Granada. Granada means the pomegranate. So that's very interesting, because the pomegranate was a symbol of the goddess in those ancient days because of its many seeds. So now we're beginning to see a little coalescence here, still, of people who, how can you say, are attached to, bonded to, or anything like that, to what we understand when we say a goddess here. So we're starting here with the Spanish, and the leader of the Spanish called Francisco Coronado. Francisco Coronado, well, he's not a common man. He's a little bit almost a noble from southwestern Spain. Participated in raids into North Africa. What was happening in North Africa in this 16th century, about then, is the country of Mauritania, right on the very west coast of northwestern Africa, was expanding. And the Castilians of Spain seemed to be concerned with that growing African semi-empire. So they were making raids into this region to harass them, at the very least. Now, then we have an interesting point, and that is Coronado mounted a huge expedition in Mexico City, financed. He had hundreds of soldiers and other people attendant and pack horses and all of that, kind of thing. I don't know, could have maybe gotten up to close to 2,000 people and horses altogether, like that. And so he set out supposedly to find these cities of gold. You're not quite sure, how this could be. The name New Mexico was actually designated by Cortez. And the reason for that is that the Aztecs somehow let him know that they came to where they are from up there. They came from the place where now is New Mexico, and they came down there to Tenochtitlan, like that. So he seemed to interpret that in some literal way. Since they looted these people here, maybe there's more loot up there. And so I think that had quite a prompt in Coronado, a bit of an adventure upstart, thinking, I can tell people I know where those golden cities are, and finance me, I'll make you rich. So I think that's somewhere along those lines of what happened. And so that's the way that he proceeded up there. The name Cibola is the way the Americans usually are translating this. The 7 cities of gold is Cibola. Cibola is some kind of a language corruption of the Cabela. The Cabela are these people who are there in northwestern Africa, more or less Morocco. Morocco's a remnant of the Mauritania that was larger at that time. And in the journals, which is translated into English, of Coronado, there's a lot of fiction in his journal to justify what turned out to be a failed expedition. But the part that is relevant, how he says, because he was in North Africa where these Berbers were, and he described them, the people that he found in this pueblo that he's calling Zuni, women look just like our women in Morocco. Now remember, this is in the 16th century, and the Arabs have been there for 1,000 years. Most of the people are Muslims. The Berbers try to skirt around that, generally speaking. But certainly at the time that Coronado was making raids into Morocco, the people were Muslims, and they dressed that way. So now he's likening that the women in this pueblo also dressed like the women in Morocco. And pictures that Edward Curtis took sort of resemble that. I don't see any of the women with veils across their faces, but they are often covered with dark clothing here. And also the other thing were the men, or the warriors as he was interpreted, that they were very gaily attired. This area that he's talking about in North Africa is called the Jajura Mountains. The Jajura Mountains. The people in the Zuni Pueblo are living in mountains. They're not rugged mountains, they're kind of nice mountains. So there is a similarity. And he goes a little bit farther. The name adobe is actually an Arabic word or an Egyptian word, tobe, like that. So he is actually employing that these people build their houses in the adobe, and that they have garden plots alongside of them, just like they have in Morocco. So all of this, does suggest, along with many other things that he has said, that he knew that these people were Berbers, and he was pursuing them with some idea when the Queen of England, declared that all Semitic people couldn't leave, and then she extended that, a few months later to also Berbers. So the Spaniards intended to corral Semitic and Berber people to fleece them, to get their money, to get their gold. That's what they were doing. The Germans did the same thing later on to people. So this is all the thing that's going on there at this time. So the whole thing is that he knew that these people were Berbers. The magazine Arizona Highway a few years ago published it's sort of like a centennial publication extolling Coronado, and it was illustrated with drawings showing these people, just wearing loincloths and headbands and ambushing the Spaniards. The whole magazine is basically erroneous, and very many people like to subscribe to the fantasy of that here, but it's totally erroneous. So I'm just giving you an idea here of this. To say something directly, the Spanish invasion into the Southwest and its dolorous assault on dirt-poor farmers, accomplished by the Spanish Catholic Church, made the history of a century that goes down in infamy. The conduct of the Spanish in the Southwest and in this particular pueblo was so atrocious. It goes on and on. That was actually told personally that Mexicans and Spanish people are not welcome to that pueblo. Now, I've got another thing here. If you can come over here to look at this. I replicated this. It's called Uki Ahana Yela, where the feather stands. Now, when the Spaniards came, they came by way of a lake called the Salt Lake at that time. And from that lake up to the actual pueblo at that time was Hawiku. That was like saying a paved road. It actually had a curve. It was a curve. It was 40 feet wide and so forth. And that is the way the Spaniards came up. And the day that they came up was the summer solstice. And on the summer solstice, the priests had put cornmeal across the road to signify that this was a a ceremony that was going on. So anybody living in that world at that time would know that, and they would not cross that cornmeal line. So when the Spaniards ignored it because they didn't know what that meant, they come upon these people who are in ceremonial celebration with their fine clothes on. The Spaniards totally mistook it as the people totally mistook the Spaniards, and then they had a conflict, and that conflict ended up in a terrible, terrible tragedy, like a small version of Gaza, and so forth. So then I want to continue a little bit more with that. The Salt Lake nearby, I don't remember how many miles away it is, not too distant, but that was a sacred lake. And sacred lakes, of course, have something we'll call a goddess. And the goddess of the Salt Lake felt that people were not respecting the lake. Maybe they were throwing their gum wrappers in it or something like that. So she left. And she left as a bird. I don't remember what kind of bird, but she flew away. And as she flew away, up is this kind of in mountains, I'm trying to say mountains in a light way, like that. There's a kind of a passageway with a rock kind of coming out, and it makes like an aperture going through. So as the story goes, is she flew through that aperture, and as she did, she clipped off one of her feathers, and that this feather fell down there, and it stands about this high. And so that's what I've replicated here. It's kind of like saying it's a sacred place because you can recall the story about how the goddess had dropped her feather there, and that is really what the name of it is here. And I do have a piece to go with that. I think I can see it fine. Hey, a fine feather's fine from the blue that's coming down toward me. Now it is reaching out to me, and as its fingers find me, an inner voice calls out to me, hey, now here it is, warmly wrapped around me, and soft felt hands pat me into shape. Ah, it's me who speaks, and it's you your touch as our breath feathers each one to another. Hey, so while we wing together as in a buzzard's glide, those little birds flutter like the cottonwood leaves in a warm summer breeze. Oh, but it's that desert wind that will buzz through the saguaro cactus spines. And as for us, with broken branches for sticks, we still beat our rhythms on this old log of ancient fires. Yeah. So there, to give you some idea of the sacredness even of a stone feather here. I have one more little piece here in Zuni words from this book, Stand in the Light. My children, verily, so long as we enjoy the light of day, we shall greet one another as kindred. Verily, we shall pray that our roads may be fulfilled. To where your Sunfather's road comes out, may your roads reach, and may your roads be fulfilled. From the Night Chant. Now I think I pretty much, one other thing I did forget. Since this is California here, people might think that's a Spanish name, but it isn't. It's a Libyan name. And the actual pronunciation was California, meaning the little land of Califia. And so in the 16th, 17th century, very much that this was known. And Calipia is a Libyan queen, and here I have her effigy, right here. And that there is literature and documentation on this subject that I have found. Oh, good, yeah, light it up. So even the Spaniards evidently coming to Southern California saw enough of people here that they did believe that this was indeed the little lamb of Calipia, which in Baja is still recognized and celebrated. So that is who California has been named for, and it is an extension from North Africa called Libya. Okay, thank you for that light. What other one you want? Actually do not know.
Pottery. Put the light on the pottery.
This here? Because Granada, it means pomegranate. Out of season, pomegranates are in December. So I do have this Pueblo pot. This is the Acama. It's kind of old. So both of these pots. But all of the southwestern pottery looks pretty similar. The Zuni is one that has, deer painted on it. But that's what this is. Any of these things are probably around 75 years old by now here. So we have one more thing when you just look at this mask here. This is a Northwest Coast mask of hummingbird. And I have it here because I'm going to finish this piece with Claudia reading her poem from a book she's published of me and my art of the hummingbird. So that's what we're going to be doing right now. You can give an introduction too.
This is a fading light.
Yeah.
And it's actually the story of a sad story, but a joyful story also. And that is of the hummingbird. And that was my first name given as an animal spirit by Coyote. And this particular story is about the Allen's hummingbird that we were watching for the past year in our yard. And we have a cat that we call Shadow because she looks like a shadow and can't always be seen. And she jumped up one day when the hummingbirds were here and she caught this Allen's hummingbird. So I was heartsick, and the colors of it were astounding. If you know an Allen's hummingbird, it's the wrong name for this hummingbird. The colors are spectacular. It has this magenta chest and a green, shining feathered back, and some rust and black and white feathered tail, and it's just the most beautiful thing. So it reminded me after I found it, and it was still, the light was just leaving it, the breath was just leaving it as I found my cat had caught it, that I had written this poem. So as a eulogy for this precious spirit, I was going to share it with you. Weighing In by Hummingbird Woman. We met in the mythic land of Califia, a shimmering breast of iridescent glory fanned this heart's desire to know itself intimately as her delight-filled messenger. And you, eagle, gave me my first plumage. As hummingbird I whir and dart from one splash of your creative essence to another, intoxicated by the beauty of your flowering thought. I plunge headfirst into your sweet inner mysteries and find you always at the center of myself. Together as eagle and hummingbird, we fly on the leading edge of time. Cosmic night hides behind her moon in the daylight sky as the world readies to dissolve and reshape a new dawn of creation, and you are the harbinger of her great cause. Through the story of Jumping Mouse, I earned my next feather. I am she who calls hawk, as I whirl and dance with hawk's prayer stick. The red tail saw me as mouse, and swiftly swooped down, leaving her taloned hieroglyph on my hand. And you, Coyote, watch hawk circle above me as I sing my spirit songs. I earned your final feather from Ma'at, of old Egypt's goddess of truth and justice. Together with you as Inpu, the underworld gatekeeper, we weigh afterlife hearts against Shult, Ma'at's ostrich feather of truth. I learned to weigh each offering brought to you, then courageously set on the scale hummingbird's fluttering heartbeat, already in flight. Thank you.
Oh. They turned it off.